tell us a bit more about your specific role within the European Parliament and the committee you represent here today?
Sure, I represent Scotland in the European Parliament, but I'm Vice Chair of the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee, which is really creating the rules for the internal market to make sure it works properly. And now the digital single market really is the internal market. So if we want all things digital to work, it's my committee that leads on many of the issues.
So there is a lot of talk, especially in the context of the expanding IoT infrastructure,
yes,
about certification, standardization, introducing certain minimum criteria for things to be safe in the future. Would you describe European Parliament as performing up to the requirements of the market at this stage, or do you think challenges are still quite formidable?
I think that cybersecurity is in the political agenda in a way it has never been before. I think that brings...
Good to hear that.
I think it is, that's a good thing. I think it brings the single market together as well as the security agenda together. That is a good thing. And I do think there's a political will to get things done in this Parliament. Obviously the clock is ticking because the parliamentary term will finish next year, and it means you've got basically a year to get anything done. But we've got the lead committee's report coming out on the 26th of March. My committee has got the report, Nicola Dante's report is there. And moving forward, I think that when it comes to getting cybersecurity right for our citizens and for our businesses, then I think we have an opportunity just now, but we've got to take that opportunity and get that piece of law through the Parliament.
Catherine, is it fair to say that as we try and progress along the cybersecurity progress in general, privacy gets compromised? Is it necessarily the outcome?
No, I think that you can have good cybersecurity and good privacy. I don't think privacy is compromised by cybersecurity at all. But what I do think is that we need to have a joined up approach how we deal with lawmaking, whether it's in cybersecurity, e-privacy, the implementation of the GDPR. We need to think more structurally together. And also I think we have to start really to future-proof the rules that we make too. When I was at the Mobile World Congress yesterday, we happened to have lunch with the chairman of Nokia, who was talking about machine learning. I think we all have to understand about what machine learning actually is, and to try and ensure that when we are making policies that we do future-proof them, and as we move forward, each one of us has to understand about machine learning, both the opportunities and also what we need to understand about issues around potential threats too.
You surely remember one of the most famous commercials probably ever produced on television. It was broadcast first during the Super Bowl in America, 1984. It was an Apple commercial, and it used the theme of Big Brother to scare people into thinking that with computers taking over some of the roles, the way people can be engaged will be more and more redundant, and in the sense that there are reasons why people should be scared of technology. Likewise, would you agree that storytelling, positive storytelling about cyber technologies is extremely important now, because various groups and institutions and organizations can be busy building those scare-mongering stories around cybersecurity?
Yeah, but that's because we don't understand actually what machine learning is all about. And if you don't understand how it actually works in practice, then some of the scare stories are just that, scare stories of something because people don't understand actually how the technology works. Now, how do we basically say to everybody, understand how machine learning works? Because how a machine learns is different from how you and I learn. And how do we get it right? So I think there's so much potential in terms of how big data can be used to solve some of the huge social challenges we face globally in terms of sustainable development goals, some of the work that's being done around how big data can save people's lives, whether it's in health or whether it's through crisis or what. Yeah, it's unbelievable, the potential. But at the same point, if people don't trust in it, and this is where cybersecurity comes in as well. And maybe the word cybersecurity is quite frightening for people if you don't understand actually what is happening in the world in terms of how machine learning works, or how the Internet of Things can have the potential to change the quality of your life and your day-to-day experiences. And this is maybe an equality issue as well. There's so many aspects of
I
it.
totally agree, but at the same time, the world has gone so complex that sometimes you get the impression, especially when countries try and seriously meddle in the electoral results of other countries, you get the impression that it is no longer facts and potential that matter. It's more about impressions and the way you can package information, isn't it?
Well, I think that it would be naive of us to think just because there's been cyber, there's not been, I think that maybe at the moment, the way cyber, maybe this goes back to your point about narratives, maybe the way that we're looking at it shouldn't be the way that we should look at it. Maybe if we had the narrative of within, say, your health service delivery or the way your health can be protected through issues around technology. For example, I was shown, something yesterday where a machine can probably detect skin cancer more effectively than a human doctor. So that's now, what does that mean? That means that it's a cooperation between both to make sure your health is better protected, not one or other. So how do we get that right? Because if people lose trust in technology, then the Internet of Things is a grand idea, but unless you have consumers and citizens buying into what the potential is, regardless of how wonderful it can be, if there's not the buy-in, you won't have the success. So how do you get it right? And I don't have all the solutions, but one of the things I think is about how do we learn, how do we educate? We know that all of this world that we exist in, the technological world, there's almost one side that is full of people who are the engineers, the technicians, the understanding, the people who've got all of this. And then there's the ordinary citizens who's looking at that world going, where does it connect with me? How do we connect it? And that's where policymakers, I think, have to come in, because we're in the middle, because we are listening and understanding, but we're not the engineers and we're not the companies, we're the policymakers representing the citizen. So that interface becomes critically important if we are going to realise the potential, basically reassure our citizens and make sure that what the potential is for jobs, for livelihoods and for the economy. We often hear that it's going to take away jobs. Actually, it will create so much potential for new jobs, new understandings, if we get it right. And at the moment, I think we're at this moment in how we work, and the Parliament, the European Parliament and the Internal Market Committee, which has consumer protection as part of its role, will be key to that.
I couldn't agree more, but at the same time you mentioned also the importance of narratives, positive narratives.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes ago I talked to one of the participants of the conference in the context of how hackers are able to spin certain stories, create certain ethos around why they do what they do. Do you think it's probably likely that sooner or later the big multinational organizations will become much more effective at attracting the best of talents in the cyber world just by building those positive stories more effectively?
Well, when you look at some of the issues around hacking, it's criminality, and that is a police matter as well. When some poor business is attacked, and especially small businesses who maybe don't have the resources to cope in the same way as larger organisations when they are. But I think that the more that we're looking at this agenda, the smarter we become to how we deal, to make sure we try and do the most we can to not have attacks happen in the first place, to then, if there is an attack, how you deal with that. And it's the balance between prevention and then reaction, because we all know the best systems in the world that will be created, we will still have those out there who will want to attack certain things. So how do we get that right? And that's why having debates around cybersecurity, having policy around cybersecurity with the Cybersecurity Act that we've got in front of us in the Parliament just now, provide us with opportunities to deliver for our citizens, to create that safe environment, but also to future-proof, so that when we are going to have the Internet of Things fully realised, we can have confidence in the goods and services that we use.